This call is being recorded.
Welcome to Ask Gwen, everyone. This morning with me, I have Sunil, and Sunil and I are going to talk about a subject, very interesting subject to me at least, which is trusting the intuition, your own human intuition. And I'm going to let Sunil introduce himself and take it away, and then we're going to talk about that and how to make intuition stronger and then all that good stuff.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to this.
So, Sandro, please explain to my audience more about what you do.
Absolutely. And just a very quick thing with it's a Sunil, so it's a little bit of a common mistake, but it's
Oh,
Sunil. That's okay. No
no.
problem. Very, it's very common for people to get that inflection wrong, but no issue. So what I do is I help people stop wasting their time making bad decisions by getting them to sharpen this thing that we're born with called our intuition. And so the simplest way I can demonstrate this is every time I speak, the first question I always ask everyone is, when has there been a time in the past when you can look back at a bad decision that you've made, yet you knew deep down that something was telling you what the right decision was? And every single time I ask that question, everybody's hand goes up because we've all had that. The moment that you made a bad decision and you knew that something was telling you what the right decision was, that something is your intuition. And it was really important for me to find out what that was because of certain things that happened in my life. And so what I did is I dug deep to really unpack what is intuition. It's incredibly complex. And my whole mission is to help people really understand it. And then we can get into things called intuitive signals. But ultimately, what it does is it helps you make the right decision in whatever situation is that you face.
So, what are those intuitive signals? I know you explained them to me briefly on our initial call, but what are those intuitive signals?
Sure. So intuitive signals are very unique. So because you and I have different experiences, these signals are very unique to us. And so what these signals are signals that our intuition is telling us what the right decision is, whether it's the wrong one or the right one. So if you're faced with any kind of decision, there's four types of intuition that work all at the same time. And now we're getting into the complexity of what intuition really is. There's four types of intuition that work all together to figure out what's the right decision that you need to make given the situation that you're in. And so one of the first things it looks at is it goes back to something called experiential intuition, where it's going back into the subconscious area of your brain, where that's stored all your experiences from the moment you were born that are relevant to you. And there's this huge library of information that it picks up on. So if the situation needs certain pieces of information, your experiential intuition will inform it there. The next thing it looks at is who's in the room with you, if there's anyone. Can I trust that person? Are the actions matching the words? Do I see some body twitches that are suspicious? And it continually watches these people to make sure that you're safe with that person. The next thing intuition looks at is it scans the room to make sure that the environment that you're in is safe or not, or you can move forward or behind. And then the last piece of intuition, the fourth one, is called creative intuition. And that's the ultimate decision that you make. And I call it creative intuition because some of the decisions we make are so obtuse that nobody but us understands it. Nobody but our intuition understands it. But that doesn't matter because it's a decision that we make for ourselves. So when those four pieces of intuition or four types of intuition come together in a split second to tell you what the decision was, intuition starts sending you these signals. So if it's a signal that's saying this is the right decision, after I've interviewed over 1,000 people now for my podcast series and even for my research, and some of the more common positive signals that people get are a pulling, or it just feels open, or it feels right, or the dots are connecting. So these are very common positive signals that are telling you that if you're thinking about taking a left, then yes, take the left. If you're thinking of taking a right and it's the wrong path to take, then you're going to start to get a negative signal. And some negative signals are the hairs in the back of the neck standing up. Some people even see an omen. Others have their left earlobe going hot. And the ultimate ones that I've heard, there are a couple of people who had the ultimate bad signal was them getting hit by a car before they actually trusted their intuition. So these signals actually start very subtle in nature. And as you continue to ignore your intuition, these signals start to get louder and louder until it's going to get you at one point. And so people have gotten rashes, almost lost their lives. Again, the ultimate negative signal before it gets you to understand that it's speaking to you, saying, I know what's the right decision is for you to make. Just start listening to me. And that's how those signals work.
So, okay. What has been the favorite episode you have done, and what has been the least favorite episode you have done?
Perhaps so. I have two of the favorite episodes I've done. It's tough, and no disrespect to everyone else that I've interviewed. The one of the first ones that I had that launched my podcast series after. I mean, the very first episode was my solo episode, but the second one was my very first guest, and this was a friend of mine who had heard me speak and really kind of he talked about intuition and kind of understood it. And then when he saw me speak, it really solidified what he thought about it because of the research that I introduced in the talk. And then he got COVID-19 and he was in New York and he almost died. He actually wanted to die. That's how bad his health was. And his intuition came through and said, no, he literally had a life or death moment. And his intuition basically gave him a signal to live. And he came out of the hospital. And 5 days later, I was the very first person he talked to about his episode. And he said, if there was anything that ever taught me about what intuition was and how you really described it well and how I was able to experience it, it was at my life or death moment. So that was one of my favorite episodes. And my second favorite episode, which is actually also one of my most popular episodes, is the one where there's Vin Jiang is a very, very popular motivational speaker. He used to be a magician, and he used to go around stage pre-COVID-19. He used to speak to about 100,000 people a year on 80 stages. And for all intents and purposes, when you looked at this guy, he was uber successful. But he was internally so unhappy. And he actually went to New Zealand to just get away from everything. When he trusted his intuition to figure out what's going on, he started putting out these papers of, okay, what are my values? What do things that I do in life mean a lot to me? So he starts putting these pieces of paper on the wall, and he soon realized that everything he put on the wall was fake. It was what other people wanted, and his intuition was just gnawing at him to say these aren't the right values for you. So he took them all down. He put some more pieces of paper up, and he really had to dig deep to figure out, what do I want? And this is where intuition becomes really key, because we talk about positive mindset, live in the present moment, but intuition actually has you living in the present moment, because the decision you make is now, and it really helps you work on your decision now. Of course, you get to the goals, which Vin has eventually gotten after that, but he went through that exercise, trusted his intuition to do that, and then he fell off the wagon, so to speak, for 6 months, and he found that he fell back into living for extrinsic things like money. He was hanging around the wrong people, and he wasted another 6 months of his life. And one of the concepts I talk about a lot in my podcast interviews is something called opportunity cost. And so what I basically told Vin was, well, Vin, it wasn't just the 6 months that you lost that you didn't learn from, but it's also the 6 months that you didn't gain from doing the right things and trusting your intuition to make the right decisions. So you actually lost a full year. And given what he does, I said, how many people did you leave behind that you couldn't help in that year that needed your help? And it was such a cathartic moment for him. he just said, I never thought about it that way. And it was a real deep conversation into things that we call intuitive hurdles and why they squash your signals. So those two happen to be my favorite ones. The least favorite one is really tough to define because every single one of them um, has had an impact on me, very cathartic. The one that I think that strikes me the least is when I was interviewing one person, and she really didn't want to go deep into um, where she was having a relationship problems, and I was trying to really
Oh,
dig deep into the relationship problem and how intuition helped her, and she kept keeping it superficial. So I think it might have stung her to go deeper, although that was sort of the understanding before we got on, and it ended up being a very superficial conversation where I wanted to go deeper. But it's up to her. It's her comfort at the end where she wants to take it and how deep she wants to go, because certainly my role is not to upset anybody or to have an uncomfortable experience. It's simply to share what she went through, because there could be somebody else having a bad relationship that they can learn from her story.
exactly. Now, what's one thing you learned, Sunil, in in 2020? What is the best thing you did in 2020?
So in 2020, the best thing that happened to me was that the floodgates kind of really opened up, because when COVID kind of hit, what ended up happening, and this is something I talked about right at the very start of COVID, we start living in a society where extrinsic motivations are important. Money, fame, lattes, doing things, although they go against our values. And when COVID-19 hit, of course, there was a lot of devastation and people going through a lot of terrible, difficult times. And I feel so sorry for that. But what it has also been able to do, it has had a lot of people look inward to see, why am I really here? Why am I doing this? Why is this my career? Why am I in this relationship? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Or in businesses, why do we sell these products and services? Who are we as a business? What does it mean to be this company? And it's really taking a shining a light inward, and people having some real, authentic conversations that are really uncomfortable. Some of my friends have never taken the time to spend time with their families because they're always out, and in some cases, it was an escape for them because they liked the euphoria of being in the limelight. And so in some cases, that's not realistic because they aren't themselves, and I can see that. And so as much as I give them advice, they don't want to take it. They're so subsumed by that high. And what ended up happening for me was I was able to reach out to a lot of people and field a lot of calls from people who needed help. And it was really, really cathartic for me because it really helped people think about where they wanted to go. Ultimately, they have to take the steps to move ahead. And I'll give you a very quick example of this. Just recently, I was on social media and I was watching one of these. There was a very popular video that came out, really, really inspirational video. And one of the comments that I saw was, "I really need to talk to someone." And so I reached out to this gentleman, and we ended up chatting on the phone. And this was a guy who he's unemployed. He's tried everything under the sun. 4 months late on his child support, literally nothing in the bank, and he was at wit's end. And he was raising a white flag because I don't know what the next step was going to be for him, and it wasn't. I don't think it was going to be pleasant. I think he was on the way down really severely. So after about 20 minutes or 25 minutes, I just ended up finding out what was his passion. What did he really want to do? What lit him up? What would make his daughter proud? And we ended up finding out this is a guy who was a welder for about 20 years, odd jobs. He's tried stuff in fishing. He's tried stuff here, retail, gas stations. And so that was his experience. but nobody wanted to hire him because of COVID. And he has a car, but he's tried everything. In about 20 minutes, we ended up finding out that he had a real passion for fishing and digital marketing, and he wanted something to do in that fishing area. And so when we tied together his passion for fishing and how he can drive a business through affiliate marketing using that, and some of the content that he can put out, which he was starting to talk about, now you can see the eyes light up, and he says, "Yeah, I know it. I can see it." And so that was his next foray. That's what he was going to do for the next few months. And he didn't need to buy ads or anything like that. He had a phone, and he just wanted to put out stuff that people would really like and eventually make some money at it. And I gave him the formula on how to do that based on sort of my experience that I have. Um, but this is a conversation, a 20-minute conversation that went from raising a white flag to who knows where it could have gone, to now him having the passion to drive towards some kind of goal. And all I did was really kind of look at what was his intuition telling him that he was passionate about, that he can turn into a purpose. I mean, passion is one thing, but you have to have a purpose to move it towards an end goal. And for him, there's got to be some money making. It has to happen for him. So that's how 2020 was really for me, and it was really great because a lot of people are turning inward to really embrace this thing called intuition, to understand it. And for me, that's right up my alley because that's where my expertise is.
And what excites you after the pandemic?
After the pandemic,
After the pandemic is over,
um,
what excites you?
there's just going to be a higher level of consciousness, or I think there's a lot more people that are just going to be dialed into who they are and where they want to be. And we're going to have people who are happier doing what they want to be. People are driven by what they're meant to do. People are hopefully learned enough to trust their intuition or figure out what that intuition was helping them, if they've taken the time to really understand that, even at a cursory level, that there was something in them that got them going in a direction. So I see this as just sort of this wave of openness, this green field that people can just go where they want to go, and find out what possibilities are there that are endless, because that's what your intuition does. When you trust your intuition, it starts to open up the doors of opportunity. It could be the people that you meet that help you along the way. It could be a business opportunity. It could be a career opportunity. It could be just anything. There's going to be a multiple number of doors that open up. And it's just, you just have to open the door with your hand and take action. And I think post pandemic, this is where you're going to have a lot more people happier and just living, because they're doing exactly what their intuition is telling them that they need to do to be happy in life.
Yeah, I agree. And if you had to meet one person dead or alive, who would that be?
Wow. I would, the first thing that pops into my head is Gandhi. And now, of course, I'm South Asian, but and I used to be called Gandhi in high school as my nickname. But the reason why I wanted to talk to him, and he's just a representative of other people that are the same, is that he stuck to his guns in what he wanted to do, being oppressed by the British. He was a simple man, no airs about him, no money, and he changed a nation. He went against the British, who had everything: money, power, yeah, and so they forced you to make decisions. And here's this man in a loincloth that turned a nation of people against the British so that they can have their freedom. And he did it by being himself and connecting with people at a very genuine level. And that's where your intuition comes in, because your intuition is a two-way street. Not only is it my intuition projecting and seeing if I can trust the other person has to trust me. And when you have that two-way trusted relationship, which is all based or grounded in intuition, now you have a bond. And he was able to do that with the majority of the Indian population. And that drove India to its independence. But if anybody ever watches the movie Gandhi, which you can see and it won an Academy Award. You can see the number of things he did that just was amazing. And I remember when I think it was Richard Attenborough who uh, took the award, not the Academy Award. He said that normally on the cutting floor, after editing is done, they normally have a 2-hour movie that are just stuff that they have to keep in because it's so essential to the story. After they did Gandhi, they had 30 hours of stuff that absolutely had to get into the movie, and of course they had to cut that even further to 2.5 hours or 3 hours, which was a really painful process. So it just goes to the power of when you tap into your intuition, like how much change can you affect? And the idea is not to change the world. The idea is to change you, right? But for Gandhi, he was very committed to a certain set of standards and values and principles, and he stuck with that despite the adversity around him. And we're all the same way. We have adversity. There's going to be ups and downs, but when we trust our intuition, it pushes through those hurdles. It gets us to find solutions. It gets us to make the right decisions so that in the end, we live a life of success and that we stop wasting time making bad decisions because we're ignoring it.
And so, if you had to walk in another person's shoes, let's say for a week, who would it be?
If I was to walk in someone's shoes,
Yes, walk in another person's shoes.
wow. You know, I'm going to take a bit of a different spin on this because I would walk in the shoes of my daughters. And the reason is this: I talk about intuition all the time at home. And of course, there are many times that they roll their eyes because that's that's all they hear, and they hear intuitionology. As a dad, you're always doing intuitionology. You're always talking about that. But one of the benefits of talking about that at home, from a behavior standpoint with my daughters, is that they've both been able to deal with bullying incidents. Now my daughters are 9 and 14. My oldest just turned 14. They're collaborating on a project right now where they can take youth through almost like a Shark Tank style process where they teach them about sort of intuition, entrepreneurship, and all that, and then get them to start a business. And my oldest daughter is running a nonprofit, an official nonprofit, where she's raised over $20,000 already to help those with disabilities and illnesses. But the reason why I want to walk in their shoes is I want to really understand, what does their dad mean when I talk about intuition? So I know kind of my internal thoughts and behaviors and advice I give, but how do they receive it? What goes through their mind when I talk about it? And it's just interesting because then I can see from the other perspective how they're conceptualizing it in their internal dialogue in their brains, and how they can, the concept of intuition, how does it really form for them versus what I think it forms for them. And it'd be really interesting to see where the difference is.
Well, I'm amazed that you want to walk in your daughter's shoes. You're actually the second person that's said that to me in the past 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it's only it's only the beginning of January, you guys, and this is a new um question for my guests. So it's gonna be interesting how many people say I want to walk in the shoes of my kids if they have kids, because I it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, that is really weird in a good way.
That is really weird in a good way, and it's like, most parents wanna walk in their kids' shoes or not, but
Yeah, that's true.
very good. And so, Neil, where can people find you if people choose to do so.
Absolutely. So I've got my main website, intuitionology.com, and there they can grab a copy of my ebook. And I also have a 7-day challenge, which is free, by the way. And it takes people through, if they grab the ebook or just go to the 7-day challenge, both ways they get the copy of the ebook. And it takes them through my 7-step process that shows them how to actually take their intuitive capabilities, the components of intuition, and use it to solve a problem. Because it doesn't make sense talking about intuition saying you have it if it can't do anything for you. And so the very first step that I have with people is to get them to actually focus it to solve a problem in their life that they wanted to. And so that 7-day challenge does that. I'm always on all my socials. I've got my YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok as well, Facebook. So I'm always there, and there's a lot more content coming out there. There's my blogs. If you ever want to DM me, send me a direct message and they have a quick question, happy to do that. And my email address is sunil@sunilgodse.com. So feel free to reach out if they've got any questions.
Yeah, and thanks to you guys for listening. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And just a quick programming announcement. We're going to have a slight delay in episodes, so be patient. Be patient with us on two fronts. Yeah, it's just a technology problem that we're dealing with right now, Danielle and I both. So be patient with us. Also, be patient with me as I do a physical move to Arizona. That's a long story in itself. Why? So you it may just have to be put your patience hat on / your intuition hat on if you're looking for Ask When. Ask When may not be there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, even though we're going to try. But I hope you guys are able to learn more about the key factors of trusting your intuition. And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. Thanks to you guys. Bye, you guys.